Now the facial feedback studies, I just can't decide which is my favorite in this set of cognitive studies, whether it's the white bear study or whether it's the cognitive therapy technique for addictions with the frontal brain, or whether it's these facial feedback studies. But here's the deal. Okay, we know that your personality and your thought processes are related, right? But let's think about this. Is it your thoughts that determine your behavior? Or could it be the reverse sometimes, that your behavior actually predicts your thoughts? This is really interesting. Really interesting. So the very first study that we're going to look at here, we're going to look at two examples of studies, facial feedback studies. We're going to start with the pen study. And what the researchers wanted to know is if they could induce people to smile, but not really smile. So not really be smiling, but use the same muscles that they do when they're smiling. Would it cause them to interpret some stimulus as more funny? Hey, so if they could induce people to use the same muscles that they usually use for smiling, but for another reason, just that muscle feedback to the brain. We're using these muscles that make us smile in our face. Would that cause the participants to interpret some stimulus as more funny? Very, very cool study. And you say, well, how in the world did they get them to use those muscles without actually smiling? And what they do is they give participants a pen, and sterilized, of course. And they told half of them that they were doing this study on multitasking, so they were going to ask them to do two things at once. And the first thing was to hold the pen between their teeth without their lips touching it. And the second one was to take a look at these jokes and to rate how funny they were, right? So think about it. If you have to hold this between your teeth, what do you have to do with your lips to make sure all the way through it they never touch this pen? You have to draw them up and out, okay? So the same kind of muscles that you use for a smile, just like you see on the slide. Now, the other half of the participants are told the same thing, multitasking study, you're going to be doing two things, but they are told that with the pen they are to hold it between their lips without letting their teeth touch it. And if you think about that, you know, that is going to entail pulling your lips down, around, over, under that pen to hold it there in place, but not let your teeth touch it at the same time. Those are the same kinds of muscles that you use when you are frowning. So all the participants' second task was identical, right? They're going to read these jokes and rate how funny they are. And who do you think rated them as significantly more funny? That first group who used their smile muscles. Is this cool or what? Okay, I'm geeking out here, I know. But let's look at the second study here, the headset study. These are just particularly cute. Okay, so the headset study, participants are brought into the lab, and I want you to imagine you're a participant, and the researcher gives you your headset, and they say you're going to listen to a speaker who is advocating a certain viewpoint, and you are going to be at the end rating how much you agree or disagree with the speaker. But now your job is just sit back and listen to the speaker. But let me tell you something. I was having troubles with this headset earlier, and I think I have it fixed. I really need you to test it out for me if you can do so throughout the speech that you're going to listen to. So the problem that we were having before is when participants move their head up or down, so just up and just down, they would get all this static sound. Okay, so every now and then throughout this, okay, I'm going to ask you to do this. Move your head up, move your head down, and stop it if you hear static. Of course, they're never going to hear static. But keep testing this throughout, and just make sure that you never hear static, or, we'll stop this and see if we can fix it further. So, of course, the participant all the way through the speech on this given viewpoint is, in actuality, using the same muscles that they usually use to nod agreement, up and down, okay? But they're not actually using it for that purpose. So, very cool. They want to see how it's going to affect their agreement. And of course, the second group comes in, they get the same story, except they're told that they're getting the trouble with the headset when participants before would move their head side to side. And they're doing that throughout it. In which group do you think rated their agreement with the speaker as significantly higher than the other? And of course, that's the first group. The group who was using the same muscles that you typically use to show agreement. Very cool stuff. All this contributed from the cognitive approach, all this great research. Okay. Now, I have a review question for you. We are now done with these approaches, all of the major approaches, and we're going to be moving on to personality disorders, particularly interesting topic. But before we do, I want to make sure that you remember the major focus or foci of these different approaches. So I want you to pause the video with this slide up, okay, and see if you can remember, write down perhaps, the major focus or foci of each of these approaches, and then come back for the answer. All right, so the first one is a behavioral approach, and that is observable, sometimes said overt learning, right, meaning observable. But it's observable behavior or overt behavior, the learned part of personality, okay? And the biological approach was genetics and physiology, so two different foci. The cognitive approach, of course, is thought processes. The psychodynamic approach, unconscious influences. The humanistic approach, positive side of human nature and free will. And the trait approach, trait dimensions. Okay? Now, understand that your last exam for the class, your final exam, is not cumulative. However, it does cover these major approaches, not just the main focus of each approach, but also the main focus of their therapies. So you're going to want to make sure that you go back and review the main focus of their therapies before going on to take the final exam at the end of this class. So as I mentioned, when we come back, we'll be looking at personality disorders.